slightly leaner times the past year for the New Orleans Saints, right? Slightly leaner. I mean, these aren't the Aints, but, after that long era of greatness of Drew Brees, that came to an end after 2020. Then Sean Payton sticks around another year, but he leaves after 2021. It's not a big surprise to me that 2022 was less than the satisfying season, I'm sure, for Saints fans. They finished 7-10. They're out of the playoff picture. You're like, oh, what do you really have to be excited about? There's no long-term answer at the quarterback position. All of that, right? And yeah, that's true. And, is what it is. Things run in cycles in life. And, the Saints can certainly think about going back into toiling into oblivion and obscurity like they have for so many decades in the NFL, other than for just how bad of a team they were. But 2022 is in the past. 2023 is a chance for a new, fresh start. And they're going to make their new, fresh start with somebody else's quarterback, and that's Derek Carr. Yippee! That'll be a trajectory and franchise changer, right? Look, I talked about this in the Raiders preview video. Derek Carr is a solid NFL starting quarterback. He's a legit starting NFL quarterback. He is. What he's not is a great or high-level NFL starting quarterback. Big difference. Like, you can win some games with Derek Carr as your starting quarterback. You're not going to win big games and big spots because of Derek Carr. That's the difference, right? But I could see for the Saints, they're kind of looking at it and they're saying, hey, we don't have a first-round pick, so, that's high, so we really can't sit there and, go after one of these quarterbacks. And looking at this division, certainly feel like it's winnable in 2023. Derek Carr gives us the best chance to do it out of the quarterbacks that are available. I can understand the thought process. Doesn't mean I fully agree or disagree with it, but I do understand the draft process. But that's a big notable move, right? That they're bringing in Derek Carr, because typically guys like Carr that have been solid starters for 9 or 10 seasons at the most important position in the game don't have a tendency to reach free agency too often while they're still in their early 30s. Yet Derek Carr did. So the Saints pounced, and we'll see whether they benefit from that or not. In terms of the draft, that's always another place that teams can find help. I really like what they did with their first 2 picks in Brian Bresee and Isaiah Foskey. You needed some talent and youth and depth and athleticism on that defensive line that you could put alongside a Cameron Jordan, and I think they got it in Bresee and Foskey. Like, I was hoping Foskey was going to be one of the Bears' picks in the second round. Didn't get there. Bresee is one of those guys that, from an athletic talent profile standpoint, he has the athletic profile of a top 10 pick. Now, to me, as I talked about, I think with this kid is at Clemson, it was always something. He's hurt, he's sick, he's got this family thing off the field, whatever the fuck. Like, it was always something. But when you're the Saints and you're drafting him at like pick 29, pick 30 range, you feel a lot better about some of those risks and like that. It's always something with this kid thing than if you were taking him in the top 10. But like I said, from an athletic and talent standpoint, he's a top 10 type of guy. And to me, Foskey was like a top 25 talent in this draft, and so to get him around pick 40 was pretty good value for the Saints. And then Kendre Miller certainly could be a guy that's a long-term play at the running back position, especially if Alvin Kamara continues to be an idiot off the field. Looking at this roster, though, for 2023, what are some of the things I like about them? Their offensive line. They've invested a lot of premium picks at that position. You look across the board from left tackle all the way through right tackle. It's like a first, second, or third round pick everywhere starting. Like, that's a lot of investment in that offensive line. It better damn be a high-level unit for that team. Because if it's not, you have a serious problem. That's a lot of wasted draft pick capital for a less than ideal return. Then I look at the defensive side of the ball and talk about their pass rush. They were 5th in the league in sacks last year. You've got Cameron Jordan, who I view as a future Pro Football Hall of Famer, and I'm certain a lot of other people do too. Crazy to think, isn't it, that he's going into year 13 in the league. That's insane. But he still plays at a pretty high level. He's their foundational piece still. But I envision that under head coach Dennis Allen, the Saints are still going to be able to get after the opposing quarterbacks. And I look at their secondary. They were second in yards allowed against the pass last year. You got guys like Lattimore and Honey Badger back there. I expect this is still going to be a good unit. I expect that they still will be. Some of the question marks on this team, I start with the defensive side of the ball, and I say the run defense. They were 24th in yards allowed last year. Like, maybe you think Kalen Saunders is going to help you a little bit there. He will. He'll give you a little bit of edge rush, but he's not going to make all the difference in the world when it comes to your run defense. And then I look at the offense, and their running game was only 19th in yards per game last year. How much are they going to put on Carr's shoulders this year, right? Like, can they balance it out a little bit and become like a top 10 rushing team? Because you would think with guys like Kamara, they signed Jamal Williams in free agency. They drafted Kendre Miller. Like, they should be able to run the ball pretty well, especially behind that offensive line. And I wonder if it's called for to execute a little bit of a shift in the offensive philosophy and to get a little more run heavy, a little more run first. But it's a question mark to me right now. And then I look at the receiving core. Like, Chris Olave is a future stud, and he really, realistically, he already is a stud, right? He certainly had those moments in 2022. But will Michael Thomas stay healthy the entire year? It's a guy that's barely played the past couple of seasons. What's he still got in the tank? What's he going to bring? And who else is going to step up in that pass catcher group to be a weapon for Derek Carr in this offense? We will find out. In terms of their schedule, looking at weeks 1 and 2, you look at them and you say, hey, like, this is where it all starts, right? Because if I look at their schedule here in week 1, hosting Tennessee, that can be a winnable game. Week 2, at Carolina, winnable game. Week 3, at Green Bay, potentially winnable game. Week 4, at Tampa Bay, hosting Tampa Bay, Week 5 at New England. Week 6 at Houston. Like, you look at the first 6 games on the Saints schedule, none of those you look at and automatically pencil in the Saints for a loss. You look at that and you say, they would have a chance to win all of these games, which to me indicates that they could start off something like 4-2, and as they go through those first 6 games and they start off 4-2, like, that's going to be a pretty good spot for them to be in. We'll see, like, if it, comes to fruition or not, but it could be, a place where they make some hay early in the year, jump out to a solid start. And then I look at their schedule later in the year, and I look at the last 5 games. They host Carolina, could be a winnable game, certainly an important divisional game. Hosting the Giants, who I think are due for a little bit of regression in 2023. At the Rams, hard to know what the Rams are going to be right now, but they weren't very good last year. At Tampa Bay, I don't think Tampa's going to be very good this year. And then hosting Atlanta in Week 18. Like, you could sit there and point to weeks 1 through 6, and say if Saints go 4-2 there, and then those last 5 games that I call out, let's say they go 3-2 there, like, that's 7-4 in those 11 games. They're probably only going to find 2 or 3 more wins out of the rest of the schedule to be able to win the division, make the playoffs, have a home playoff game. And I think they do. And that's why I think the Saints are going to win this division. I think they're going to win 10 games. They've got the best quarterback in the division right now. I think they've got enough there still from the foundation that they've had the past few years. I think this is going to be the best team in the division. They're going to win 10 games. They're going to win the division. They're going to make the playoffs and then be a quick elimination by somebody.